Hello and welcome to Simply Balanced, the podcast where we dive into, all things balanced. I'm your host, Taylor Grasso, a registered dietitian with a passion to helping you find your unique Balance Girl aesthetic in this often hectic world. Each episode will explore different facets of living a balanced life, whether it's unraveling the latest nutrition trends, discovering mindful eating strategies, or discussing tips for a balanced lifestyle that fits your routine. Balance isn't about perfection, it's about making choices that feel right for you, nurturing your body and mind, and enjoying life's simple pleasures. So whether you're sipping your morning coffee, heading out for a walk, or winding down for the evening, I'm thrilled to have you join me. So let's dive in and talk, all things balanced. Hello, besties, and welcome back to another episode of Simply Balanced. As always, thank you for being here and thank you for listening and supporting. This week, we are going to talk a little bit about cycle syncing and my personal birth control journey. Now, I do want to preface this episode by saying, as a registered dietitian, it is my job to share evidence-based information. I will say that as of right now, we don't necessarily have a ton of research on cycle syncing. And if I'm being totally honest, I don't know if we ever will, because the reality is every woman's cycle and every woman's hormone fluctuations are so different that I think it is going to be something that is difficult to ever have true data and research on. So in sharing this episode and anything that I ever share in terms of cycle syncing, I'm sharing what has worked really well for me and my own personal journey. And if you choose to implement it and it works well for you, then I love that for you. But it's also recognizing that not necessarily everybody feels the same throughout the course of their cycle due to the variations in our hormone fluctuations. So all of these things are information that we know can support our menstrual cycle, but it's not necessarily something that we have evidence on, unfortunately. So I do just want to give a little preface to that before I start the episode. And last week, hopefully you listened to that episode before you're listening to this episode, I talked all about the menstrual cycle, the hormones that are involved, and just kind of like what the cycles actually are, or like what are the phases of our cycle, I guess is what I should be saying. I think that episode's really important to listen to before diving into this one, because understanding like the basics of our cycle first before you hear about cycle syncing, kind of my own personal journey, I think is super important. So let's get right on in and talk all things cycle syncing. Okay, let's dive right on in. And I do have just a little bit of a cold that I caught from Zach, so I'm hoping that I don't have any coughing fits throughout the course of this episode. It's so frustrating because I feel pretty much fine. I'm a little bit tired, but my chest hurts and I just have a really annoying cough. So I'm hoping that I don't go into any coughing fits during the course of this episode. But I wanted to kind of just give my story and my background of why I decided to come off of birth control and then what my cycle syncing journey has really looked like. Because honestly, both of those things, so coming off of birth control and starting to cycle sync, have been absolutely life-changing for me specifically. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact of learning and understanding my cycle and how my hormone fluctuations move throughout the course of the month has given me a lot more grace and compassion with myself. Like when I was in the depths of orthorexia and dealing with obsessive exercise and kind of compulsive exercise, I do think that I would push my body to the absolute limit all the time. And I never really understood why there were certain parts of the month where like I would go for runs and I would feel incredible, on top of the world. It felt so easy. And then there would be weeks of the month where I was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I feel like I can't breathe. I don't understand. Same thing with weightlifting too. Like as I transitioned from running to weightlifting, I started to notice like there were certain parts of the month where I felt so good. I could lift such heavy weight. And then all of a sudden it would be the following week. And the weight that I lifted last week would now feel like 1,000 pounds heavier. And I never understood it. And I used to beat myself up for it because I would think you did something wrong. You ate something wrong. You know, I would blame myself with a lot of those ED-based thoughts. But understanding and learning how my hormones actually affect the way I feel throughout the course of the month, not to mention how they affect my body. Like in terms of the way in which your body fluctuates and changes, like a woman can gain an average of 5 to 7 pounds during her menstrual cycle. And we don't talk about that often enough. And that's not 5 to 7 pounds of fat. That's literally just 5 to 7 pounds of water weight due to the fluctuations in your hormones. Progesterone is a very that's not the right word that I'm looking for. Progesterone causes water retention within the body. So when we have that being produced after ovulation, the likelihood that we're going to feel a lot more bloated and potentially gain some weight in between the luteal and menstrual phase is pretty dang high. But we're going to kind of just get into like what my journey was and what my story was. So I was on birth control for 10 years. I went on it at age 13. I was basically having a lot of weird digestion things going on when I was younger. I also had really bad acne, and I also had debilitating cramps. Like, they were absolutely terrible, and there would be times where I would have to miss school. They would make me nauseous. They would give me headaches. And so I went into the doctor, and at that time they diagnosed me with PCOS, which I don't think is an accurate diagnosis. I've never gone back in to get rechecked because I really don't have any of the symptoms of PCOS. And at that time, they also didn't do any sort of ultrasound, which is one of the diagnostic factors that you need to actually get like a true PCOS diagnosis. And like I said, I have zero symptoms in adulthood. So I really don't think that I have it, but maybe I should go get that checked at some point. However, I think where this was coming from is there are a couple different variations of PCOS, but the one that I believe they were kind of correlating with me was a high androgen level PCOS because I did have acne on both my face and my back. When I was younger, I struggled with back acne so much more significantly than I do in adulthood, which I'm very grateful for because it was definitely so much more challenging when I was younger and I didn't have as positive of an outlook in terms of body image. And also, you're a young developing brain that has acne on their back. Like, that is not a fun thing to go to the pool when you're in middle school or high school and be worried about that. And so when I went on birth control, I mean, that got rid of my acne completely. Like, from the age of 13 to about 19, I would get breakouts around my withdrawal bleed on my like on the pill. But other than that, like, I really didn't struggle with acne all that bad at all. And then like at 19, I had this really weird breakout where I thought I was going to have to go on Accutane. I tried a billion different medications. An antibiotic called Bactrim is actually what ended up curing or not curing, but like getting rid of my acne at that time. Now into like full on adulthood. So from like 19 to 26, I would say that like my acne goes in and out. I feel like with seasons changing, that's where I tend to get it the worst. And I do tend to get it on my face more so now than my back, but I do like last week, I had a really bad back breakout. So it just kind of depends. But that was the initial reason that I really went on birth control, was because of acne and then also cramps. And of course, that took it all away because that's really what birth control does, is because you're getting those synthetic hormones at a specific dosage every single day. It's probably going to eliminate a lot of these symptoms that are associated with, having too high of estrogen, having too low of estrogen, having too high of progesterone, having too low of progesterone, because now you're just getting a steady dose every single day. So I was taking a pill. I was on a combined estrogen and progesterone pill. I believe I was on the generic form of Yaz was the name of it. And now, honestly, I don't even know if it's available because I do think that there actually might be some studies linking Yaz to heart problems in women. And I should probably double check that because I honestly can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that was like one of the things that also kind of scared me about that specific pill. I guess I should say too, I said this in the menstrual cycle episode as well, that I am by no means promoting or saying that anyone should not be on birth control. If you feel like that is the best decision and the best choice for you, then I am all for that because that is your decision. That is your right as a woman to choose if that is something that is serving you in the best way possible. This is just my personal journey and what I have experienced by coming off of the pill. So I just want to preface that too, that like if you're on birth control right now, this episode is not meant to make you feel guilty for that choice because that is a very personal choice and that is something that you have the right to make for yourself. And when I was on this pill, specifically in college, I noticed it a lot more. I had a lot of gut issues and a lot of mental health issues. And when I say gut issues, I was living off of digestive enzymes and charcoal pills, and I thought that I was allergic to every food on the planet. Now, the hardest part about this is, in terms of like the gut issues and the mental health issues, is that this was also kind of the height of dealing with orthorexia. And what we know is that restrictive dieting can cause a lot of digestive issues as well. So I don't necessarily know if this was from the birth control, from the orthorexia, or from a combination of both of them, if I'm being totally transparent. But I was literally living off of charcoal and digestive enzymes, where like I could not eat a singular meal without being gassy, without feeling 6 months pregnant, without just being uncomfortably bloated. Like I can remember going to bed most nights laying on my stomach, trying to get some form of comfort. And it was just something where as I went into adulthood, I started to really evaluate birth control a little bit more. And I was wondering, like, is this something that's potentially causing issues within my gut? And is it something that I feel like is serving me in the best way possible? Another problem that I was experiencing with birth control was also low libido. It was definitely something that was like, I just wasn't as interested in it as I wanted to be. And I think a lot of women have the same experience when going on birth control or coming off of birth control. I've heard it from a variety of women that when they come off of birth control, they really didn't realize how bad their libido was while they were on the pill. And we think about that, like, for example, when you're ovulating, that's when you can get pregnant. Your body is going to naturally surge more hormones that are going to make you horny. Like, let's be real, because at that time of the month, your body wants to reproduce and make a child. So it's going to make you more in the mood. And then, like, during my luteal and menstrual phase, I have pretty much zero interest because I just don't feel my best. But during that follicular and ovulation phase, like, I feel really good. And I definitely notice that my libido has gotten a lot better since coming off of birth control. So I made the decision to come off of it on January 1st of 2020, and I came off of it cold turkey, which is not something that I would recommend. I would definitely prepare your body to come off of birth control, but also I feel like I came off of birth control kind of, I don't want to say like ahead of the game, but ahead of kind of the trend of coming off of birth control. Like, I had just gotten to the point where I had done enough research on my own to think that that was the best choice for me. I remember I like sat Zach down and I was like, I really don't want to be on this anymore, and I need you to support me in this decision. And he was 100% supportive. He had no issue with it. His main question was like, okay, but like, what are we going to do to prevent pregnancy? Because at this time I was 22. So like, we were not engaged. We were not married. Like, a child was nowhere in our near future. And so I was like, I mean, there's other ways that we can, prevent pregnancy. And of course, like, I'm going to dive into that a little bit too, because I don't think that we talk enough about non-hormonal birth control options, but he was completely supportive. And I actually have kind of a funny story about this. And I'm sorry to any of my family members who are going to listen to this episode, but my parents already know this story because it literally happened. But like, shortly after I came off birth control, Zach and I went to Walgreens after dinner. Like, one night we went out on a date night just to pick up a couple of things. But Zach was like, well, since you're on birth control, we should probably buy condoms. And I was like, yeah, probably. So we went and we like bought condoms, and my dad has like a Walgreens rewards card. I didn't know that like when you have a Walgreens rewards card, because I don't have one, you like enter your phone number when you're checking out, and it sends the person whose account is connected a receipt to the order. So I like entered my dad's phone number because I was like, oh, I'll give him some reward points and like maybe he has a coupon for something else that we purchased. No, my dad just got the receipt to see that we were buying like candy and condoms. So that was super fun. And we all laughed about it. Like, it was kind of a funny situation. It wasn't something super serious, but that was like kind of initially when I first came off, I was a little bit more scared of like pregnancy scares, because when you come off of birth control, your cycle, at least for me, was all over the place. Like, I would have cycles that were 21 days apart all the way up to like 46 to 47 days apart. So my ovulation was very unpredictable, which in the beginning I did use LH strips a lot more. So I talked about that on last week's episode. LH is that hormone that surges right before you ovulate. So if you get a positive LH test, that really does indicate like, okay, you're ovulating or you're going to be ovulating within like the next 24 hours. This is the time to abstain. And so, or have, sex if you're trying to have a child. But I really used those religiously in the beginning. And I guess I should also say that in the beginning, I used natural cycles, and I still use it to this day. But at that time, I didn't have an Aura ring. So I utilized natural cycles. I bought the thermometer. And natural cycles is an FDA approved form of birth control. And when used, I think it's considered like perfect use. It's 98% effective. So the thing about me is that I wasn't perfectly using it, because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to pop that thermometer in your mouth like the second your eyes open. You should not stand up. You should not do anything. It's measuring your BBT temperature. So it measures out to the second decimal point. And the reason that this is showing you or like kind of helping you plan for pregnancy and or abstain from pregnancy is because when you ovulate, your basal body temperature actually increases. And that can be as slight of an increase as like to that second decimal point as comparative to what your average is. So by measuring this every single morning, the app will start to track and kind of the algorithm will build out like when you're ovulating based on your temperature fluctuations. But like when we would travel, for example, I would forget the thermometer, or like at this time I was still drinking, and like on the weekends when I was drinking, it's like I'd forget to do it in the morning because I was hungover and didn't feel good. Not to mention that like drinking also kind of interacted with the BBT temperature, so that could kind of throw off the algorithm too. So at that time, I was definitely not utilizing it to perfect use. But then about 6 to 8 months after coming off of birth control, I decided to invest in the Oura Ring. So the Oura Ring, you wear it on your finger. It actually directly syncs with natural cycles. And that was when I decided to buy it. I had been eyeing the Oura Ring for a while, but I was like, it's kind of pricey. Like, I don't really know if it's worth it. I already have an Apple Watch. But then when they announced their partnership with Natural Cycles, I was like, okay, this is definitely worth the investment, because also like $400 cheaper than a baby. So that was my justification for buying it at the time, where I definitely could not really afford it back then. But that's okay. We bought it, and that has absolutely changed the game in terms of the accuracy of me actually measuring my temperature, because the nice thing is now the Oura Ring detects when I wake up in the morning. It takes my temperature and then it just shoots it over to the Natural Cycles app. So it syncs up every single day. I rarely miss a temperature unless like I forget to charge my Oura Ring and then it dies in the middle of the night. But for the most part, like today, for example, my Oura Ring was low battery this morning. It's my rest day. So like I'm just setting it on the charger for this morning and leaving it there. And now it's going to be fully charged for like 3 to 4 days. It really doesn't need charged that often. And like I can do a full episode on an Oura Ring review if you guys want me to do that at some point. So I won't like spend too much time on it. But overall, I absolutely love it. And I would say that in terms of Natural Cycles, it's 1000% worth it, just because I know that my temperature is getting taken every single morning. And my algorithm is so concise ever since I've started using it. It also did take about a year for my cycles to really regulate and like get to a normal standpoint. But now 4 years into the game, like it is a night and day difference that thing is never freaking wrong. Like I don't really test with LH strips for ovulation anymore, just because now that I'm so in tune with my cycle and my body, like I can feel when I ovulate, because not everyone feels their best when they ovulate. I'm one of the few who don't feel their best when they ovulate. So I feel really good in my follicular phase, like the first 2 weeks coming out of my menstrual cycle. But once ovulation hits, I'm crampy. I get a little bit bloated. I actually usually break out during ovulation, which is super fun. And so I don't necessarily feel my best. And I also have something called Mittelschmerz, which is where you get cramping during ovulation. And it's definitely nowhere near the cramping that I get when I'm on my cycle, but it usually is like 1 or 2 days of cramping. The nice thing about ovulation cramping, well, I don't know if it's a nice thing, but the nice thing is that it only happens on one side, because it's typically the side that the egg is kind of dropping from, which is always funny because I'll literally tell Zach, I'll be like, oh, eggs dropping from the left side this month. Like I have cramps on the left side. And he's like, that's so weird that you can feel that. And I'm like, I've just gotten so in tune with my body. Like I don't even need to look at my app anymore to know when I've gone from follicular to ovulation. Like I ovulated last week and I knew immediately. Like I just felt that shift in my body. And now this week I'm shifting into my luteal phase, and not to mention like kind of having a little bit of a cold and shifting into it. I can definitely feel it. Like I'm not feeling as creative. I'm not feeling as high energy. Like I definitely kind of went to the gym yesterday and just went through the motions, rather than last week I felt like I was kicking the gym's ass. So that's something that I think has been a little bit nice, is that I really am so in tune with my body and the way that I feel during each phase of my cycle. But like me not feeling my best on ovulation is a perfect example that not everyone feels the same throughout the course of those 28 days, even though we kind of have a frame of reference based on the way in which the average hormones fluctuate throughout the course of the month. Now, in terms of cycle syncing, I did not start cycle syncing until 2023. So last year, I would say like leading up to my wedding, so that was in 2022, I was really contemplating cycle syncing my workouts. But if I'm being totally transparent, and this is why I kind of like stepped away from social media during that time too, my wedding, I felt like I was really anxious and really like antsy kind of leading up to it. And I went on an antidepressant for the first time in my life. I believe it was Lexapro. And I actually ended up having like quite a few health issues from Lexapro. Like, I don't know if it was the drug exactly, which now that all makes sense because I didn't need more serotonin. I needed more dopamine because now I have an ADHD diagnosis. But I was getting like heart palpitations. My heart rate kept dropping like when I was doing exercises. It was super strange. And the Lexapro also really negatively impacted my appetite. So I actually ended up losing like quite a bit of weight leading up to my wedding, which was completely unintentional. Like, I was not working out any harder. I was not eating any less outside of the fact that like I genuinely could not eat because I felt so sick all the time. I don't know if it was from the anxiety or from the Lexapro or from both, but when I came off of the Lexapro, I felt so much better. But that's why I kind of took a step away from social media at that time. And although I was contemplating cycle syncing my workouts, I don't think I was in like a good enough headspace to really like dive into what that looks like for me specifically. And I also think at that time it wasn't my primary focus. So then kind of leading into 2023, because I got married in October of 2022, like January, February, March of last year, I was really like contemplating it because I kept seeing things on social media about individuals saying that it's been life-changing for them. They feel so much better while cycle syncing. But there was still this part of me that like, in terms of my orthorexia, I feel like my relationship with food was something that was, I don't want to say easier for me to heal because that's definitely something that like it was hard, but not to the point of the obsessive exercise. Like, I still to this day feel like I do struggle with kind of compulsive exercise in the sense of I genuinely love moving my body and I love how it makes me feel. Rest days are something that is super hard for me. And I think just being like a type A perfectionist, overproduction type person, I genuinely love to move every day. But I also recognize that physiologically, that's not what's best for my body. And so like taking that break is something that's super hard for me. And I think also coming out of high school and college where I was running track and cross country and then running half and full marathons, I was someone who was like, if I'm not sweating, if I'm not about to throw up, if I'm not about to like die at my workout, then does it really count? So like shifting that mindset that I don't always have to be doing high intensity workouts was something that I just don't think I was ready for quite yet. So around August of 2023, so I really haven't been cycle syncing workouts that long because it's March of 2024 now. In August of 2023, I went through like a luteal and menstrual phase where it was just awful. And I was still trying to push myself so hard during my workout that I began to wonder like maybe it would be of a benefit to give my body a little bit of a break during my luteal and menstrual phase. So that's what I did. I finally just got to the point where I was like, okay, this doesn't mean that I have to like not work out for 10 to 14 days during my luteal and menstrual phase. It just means that I lower the intensity of my workouts. So my normal weekly split is typically a 5-day split. I usually take one full on like rest day where I try not to do a whole lot besides like maybe walk the dogs once that day. And then I'll typically do like an active recovery day where I am taking more walks, especially once it's nice outside, but I'm not really doing anything else. And then the other 3 days, I usually do 2 days of sculpt hot yoga. So that's like a mixture of, it's not really high intensity, but like kind of, it's like a mixture because you do cardio bursts throughout the course of the class, but I would say that my heart rate stays pretty neutral throughout the rest of the class because it's also involving strength and yoga like in a heated room. And I love it because I just sweat and I love getting sweaty. Like it's something that just feels so good to me. And then the other 3 days, I do kind of like a 3-day split. I'll do like an upper body, a lower body, and then typically I'll do like a full body circuit day with Zach. So I just started with making small transitions of like, for example, on a leg day, if I had deadlifts in my program, I was not trying to PR. I was not trying to push weight. I was doing like dumbbells or kettlebell deadlifts instead of trying to push my body to the absolute brink. And after doing that for the first time in August, I realized how much better I felt during my luteal and menstrual phase. I didn't feel as inflamed. My cramps only lasted 1 day instead of multiple days. I just felt so much better. And I was like, oh, maybe there is something to this, like for me specifically. And now when it comes to cycle syncing, there's a variety of different things that are out there in terms of what you can do for cycle syncing. I still to this day only sync my workouts. So I don't do anything really nutritionally wise different throughout the course of my cycle, except for like the week of my luteal phase. Sometimes I'll cut back on caffeine. And if I was drinking, that would also be a time that I would cut back on alcohol, because alcohol and caffeine can both lead to water retention as well. And because your progesterone is oftentimes higher during that luteal phase, it can just help with overall bloating. So that is definitely something. And I guess the other thing that I do is raspberry leaf tea during my luteal phase and then my menstrual phase. And then if I'm breaking out, I'll also do spearmint tea. Spearmint tea is like antimicrobial and can help to reduce acne. And then raspberry leaf tea can help with the contractions of the uterus. So it can kind of help to reduce cramping. And I've definitely noticed that it helps as long as I'm consistent with it and actually like drink it throughout the entirety of the luteal and menstrual phase. So right now, though, for the most part, I only cycle sync my workouts. And like I said, there's not a ton of evidence-based science out there. However, there is one study that links the follicular phase and ovulation and then the luteal phase and menstruation to kind of a potential as to why this might be the case in terms of during the follicular and ovulation phase, your metabolism is slightly slower and your body prefers carbohydrates for the oxidation of energy versus fat sources. What we know about exercising is that when you're doing more high intensity exercise, carbohydrates are the preferred source of energy or the preferred source of fuel. And then in terms of the luteal phase and the menstrual phase, you have a higher or faster metabolism and your body prefers the oxidation of fat versus carbohydrates. And what we know is that when you're doing lower impact workouts, your body is utilizing more fat sources as your energy rather than carbohydrate sources. And the reason for that is I've talked about this before, but when it comes to carbohydrates, your body can break those things down so quick. It can turn it into ATP so fast. So when you're moving at a very high intensity pace and your body needs a quick turnover of energy, it's going to primarily utilize carbohydrates because it's able to convert that and oxidize it into energy much quicker. But when it comes to fats and lower impact workouts, because you're moving at a slower and lower pace, your body has more time to not only have to utilize carbohydrates. Now, I want to say that when it comes to exercise, the likelihood that you're going to only use one source, like only use carbs or only use fats, is very slim. You're almost always going to use a combination of both carbohydrates and fat. So like even when you're doing those lower intensity workouts, you're still utilizing carbs. And then even when you're doing those high intensity workouts, you're still utilizing fats. It's just at a lower percentage than the latter. And so that is like one research study where we could potentially see like, oh, this might be why it makes sense or why we talk about doing more higher impact workouts during the follicular and ovulation phase and more low impact workouts during the luteal and the menstrual phase. And now I also saw, which was kind of fitting, I saw on Instagram on this yesterday from another dietitian who was like, you shouldn't be cycle syncing your workouts if you don't have the basics down. And I 1000% agree with that. Like if you are someone who is trying to establish a fitness routine, you're trying to establish a nutrition routine for yourself, start with the foundational basics. Don't try to start with cycle syncing because cycle syncing and learning about the cycle is complex in and of itself. Like it is not necessarily something that is easy by any means. And so I would start by learning the foundationals and starting to learn how to tune into your body, like figuring out how to prioritize more protein, adding in more fiber to your diet, adding in more fruits and vegetables, getting enough sleep, moving your body in ways that you enjoy. Establish those things first. And then if you feel like I think cycle syncing would be something that would potentially benefit me, then kind of leaning into some of this might be something that is helpful. But I definitely think establishing those foundational boundaries first is incredibly important. And now I had mentioned at the beginning too that as someone who went off of hormonal birth control, cold turkey, meaning that like I just literally didn't go pick up my packet. I just stopped taking it and never looked back. I would not recommend that. And I said that at the beginning too, because birth control can affect your gut microbiome. It can also deplete your body of vitamins and minerals that are necessary to grow a child. And it can also just all of a sudden your body has been getting the same synthetic hormones. Like think about that. For 10 years, I was getting the same exact hormones in the same exact dosage every single day. And then now all of a sudden my body's just not getting that, like cold turkey. And I really didn't know enough to know how to support my body before coming off of birth control. And I think that I would have potentially negated or lessened some of the post-birth control syndrome side effects that I had. And in terms of post-birth control syndrome side effects, I just want to also preface that every woman that I've ever worked with that has come off of birth control and we've worked together like through that and prepping and preparing her body, every single one has had a different experience. So like for me, when I came off of birth control, the worst thing for me was the acne, which I would probably say that what you can maybe guess might happen is that if you went on birth control to stop something like cramps or acne or headaches, the likelihood that you're going to experience that once you come off is pretty high because birth control was kind of acting as a Band-Aid. It wasn't necessarily addressing the root cause of why you're feeling that way. And so that was definitely something that I knew that I was going to have cramps and I knew that my acne was probably going to come back. I just didn't know that it was going to come back in the force that it did. And I would say that the first 6 to 8 months were pretty freaking brutal. I had pretty bad acne on my face, pretty bad acne on my back. I did lose a lot of hair as well. Like I would shower and just clumps of my hair would fall out. I've had thick hair my entire life. I never thought that I would have to have extensions, but I literally had to get extensions for my wedding because so much of my hair had fallen out and it was so thin. I feel like this last year, I've really gotten a lot of my thickness back in my hair. I also had COVID really bad that year. So I don't know if like that was both birth control and COVID that kind of caused the hair loss, but I definitely experienced a lot of hair loss as well. And in terms of what I did to kind of like support my body once I figured out how to support my body was one thing that's been life-changing for me, and this is not an ad. I wish it was because I love this product. I buy it every single month with my own money, but ClearStem, I think it's like a vegan healthcare or like skincare brand. Basically, the two founders had been on Accutane or spironolactone multiple times in their lives, and they just did not want to be on any sort of prescription medication anymore for their acne. So they decided to create their own supplement. So it's purely a supplement. It just has natural herbs, vitamins, and minerals that help to support your body in terms of hormonal acne. And that's most definitely what my acne was. Like it was on my jawline, it was on my neck, it was on my chin, it was kind of around my mouth area, like those very stereotypical hormonal acne spots, not to mention the back acne as well, definitely hormonal for me specifically. And if I am consistent with that vitamin and I take it every single day, my skin is glowing. Like it cleared up that hormonal acne and probably, I would say it took me about 6 weeks to really see a big difference. But as long as I'm consistent with that, my skin looks absolutely incredible. I also feel like it actually helped my hair. I don't necessarily know how or why, but my nails grow so fast and my hair has gotten so much thickness back. And I would say that that started like right around the time that I started that supplement. So definitely some big benefits in that supplement. And like one of the main ingredients in there in terms of kind of like helping acne is vitamin A. So what Accutane is, like if you're someone who's struggled with acne in your life, you know what Accutane is. That's kind of like the last resort of last resorts when it comes to acne treatments because that shit rips your body apart. Like my roommate in college had to do Accutane and her poor skin, like you basically shed your skin like a snake. It's incredible. But what it is it's a super freaking high dose of vitamin A. And vitamin A is really good at helping to regenerate your skin and help you to create like new skin cells. So that's definitely one of like the ingredients in there. And then another one is DIM, which actually helps with the metabolism of estrogen. So it helps your liver to detoxify estrogen a little bit better and more efficiently. But like I said, notice a huge difference from taking that. Now, if I could go back and prep my body and support my body prior to coming off of birth control, these are most definitely the things I would do. And when I'm working with clients, I'm working with 2 clients right now who are planning to start conceiving later in the fall, and they're both coming off of birth control here in the next few months. And these are a couple of the things that I'm recommending to them and what I recommend to all of my other clients who are planning to come off of birth control. So number 1, and I actually recommend this for any woman of a childbearing age who's actively menstruating and plans to have a baby, a high quality prenatal. And the reason that I recommend this is because a lot of the vitamins and minerals that can be found in a prenatal, so things like B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, folate, those ones specifically, your body, birth control actually really depletes your body of those specific nutrients. So getting a high quality prenatal into your system 3 to 4 months prior to coming off of it, I think that some of the post-birth control symptoms are related to vitamin and mineral deficiencies, as well as kind of the withdrawal of coming off the hormones. And the women that I've worked with that have started a prenatal 3 to 4 months prior to coming off of it have had a much better experience. Now, I'm not going to say that that's the case for every single woman. I want to preface this by saying this may help to improve post-birth control syndrome symptoms, but I think that having a high quality prenatal is something that's really awesome, like I said, for anyone who is actively menstruating and plans to have a child at some point. The brand that I typically recommend, also, this is not an ad. I actually am really excited because I do have a sponsored post coming with them soon, but this one's not an ad. I have recommended them for years to a variety of women, but I recommend Ritual. They actually have a combination pack. When you go to their website, they have a like trying to conceive or pregnancy tab, and they have a little trio bundle. So it has a prenatal, it has an omega-3, and then it has their symbiotic. So the reason that I recommend this one is because they're third-party tested, which is what I always look for in supplements. Essentially, when you're looking at a supplement, they're not heavily regulated by the FDA. So what's on the label doesn't necessarily have to match what is in the product. So when we have a third-party tested supplement, that means that they are tested for purity and potency, and the likelihood that they're actually going to work and benefit you is so much higher. So that's why I always recommend a third-party tested supplement. The other reason that I love their prenatal, whether you're trying to conceive or plan it or you already are pregnant, is I think it's like the coating or the outer layer is like a mint or a lemon flavor. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried like a prenatal that's not a gummy, but those things taste awful and they're so hard to swallow. So I like that they encapsulate it in that like minty or lemon flavor because it just makes it a lot easier to take. And the same thing goes for their omega-3 supplement because their omega-3 supplement is encased in, I believe that's the lemon one, so that you don't get like the fishy burps. Because I one time like bought a cheaper version because I was like, oh, the Ritual one's kind of expensive. Like maybe I shouldn't buy this one. And I bought a cheaper one, and the fishy burps, I was like, I threw it away immediately. I could not handle it, and I could not imagine taking that like pregnant with those fishy burps. I mean, I've never been pregnant, but can't imagine. I feel like that would just be awful, and it would be so much more like prominent of a taste. And then in terms of like the omega-3 component and the symbiotic component of that trio is that the birth control may have a negative impact on the gut microbiome, meaning that it can deplete the beneficial or probiotic bacteria that live in the gut microbiome. And so the Symbiotic Plus has both prebiotics and probiotics, meaning that the prebiotics are going to feed the beneficial probiotics and hopefully help to multiply and increase the variety of probiotics that exist within the gut. Because what we know is that that's leading to better health outcomes and improved gut microbiome, all of those types of things. So that is definitely something that I highly encourage. And then in terms of the omega-3 fatty acids, that can help to reduce inflammation within the body. Now, once again, this is a may help to reduce inflammation within the body, but we also don't necessarily get enough omega-3 fatty acids from our diet. Some of the foods that contain it are salmon, walnuts, flax seeds, foods that are just not commonly eaten. Like you're typically not eating salmon every single night. You're typically not having walnuts every single day. And we do get a plentiful amount of omega-6 fatty acids in our diet. This is where the whole seed oil debate debacle comes in. So by supplementing with those omega-3 supplements, that may help to increase the amount of omega-3s that you have kind of circulating in your body. So that is definitely like the trio of supplements that I typically recommend prior to coming off of birth control. And now in terms of supporting your body via nutrition prior to coming off of birth control, what we're trying to do is support natural estrogen and progesterone production while also managing androgen secretion. Androgens can come from, they're more so male hormones, and that's what can cause like excess facial hair. It's what can cause acne on the face and also the back. So it's normal for us as females to have some androgens, but we don't want to like have an astronomical amount. One of the things that we can do is prioritize protein. This is specifically related to blood sugar balance. So what we know about balancing out your blood sugar throughout the course of the day is it can benefit your metabolism. It can also benefit just like your overall health in general, and it can also potentially reduce inflammation within the body. So making sure that you're prioritizing protein at your meals and snacks. I always say aim for like 8 to 15 grams of protein at your snacks and then 20 to 30 grams of protein at most of your meals. That's a really great way to make sure that you're getting in a good amount of protein throughout the course of your day. And then including healthy fats in your diet. So healthy fats are so incredibly important and oftentimes looked over because in the early 2000s, fats were like the devil and nobody wanted to eat them. But the reality is that for us as females, healthy fats are so important for hormone production because fats can break down into cholesterol, which is actually a precursor to the sex hormones estrogen and progesterone. So healthy fats can actually help with the natural production of these two sex hormones that help to drive our menstrual cycle. So things like avocado, nuts, oils, seeds, all of those types of things are going to be salmon is another really good one, are all going to be super beneficial, and including those at most of your meals and snacks to help get your cycle back. I had one client that I was working with who she had amenorrhea, which is the loss of your menstrual cycle, and we started adding in and prioritizing more healthy fats at her meals and snacks, and she got her cycle back in like 2 or 3 months after we started working together, and it was freaking incredible. Like it came from other work that she was doing too, but healthy fats do make a really big difference when you start adding them into your diet. Not to mention that they're also the most satiating macronutrient, so they are going to increase some satisfaction to your meals and help keep you fuller for longer. Making sure that you are eating enough and getting adequate carbohydrates. Because what do we know about not eating enough? That it could potentially lead to amenorrhea or the loss of our menstrual cycle because your body's like, well, if you can't support my energy needs, there's no way that you can support the energy needs of a baby. So by getting in enough energy needs or getting in enough energy and also having adequate carbohydrates, prioritizing those complex carbohydrates with additional fiber, that can also help to support the gut microbiome. So things like whole grains, beans, fruits, vegetables, all of those are really important. I always say to aim for like half of your grains to be whole grains. That way you're getting in a good amount of fiber, you're getting in some good carbohydrates for your brain and body's main source of fuel, and you're also providing your body with adequate amounts of energy. Another thing that you can do is eating more cruciferous vegetables. So things like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. This actually helps to support estrogen metabolism and support your liver. Now, the little caveat here is that in terms of cruciferous vegetables, they do have an insoluble fiber that's harder for some people to digest. So that if you notice that you get more gassy on cruciferous vegetables, just don't include this one, and that's okay. You don't have to do all of these. It's more so just like picking and choosing which ones you think feel right for you. Another one, because that one supports your estrogen metabolism, is progesterone supporting foods. So progesterone is only produced after ovulation, and we want to make sure that we are supporting our body in terms of making that progesterone. So vitamin C rich foods, things like citrus, lemon, lime, oranges, berries, red bell peppers actually have more vitamin C than an orange, are all great ways to help support progesterone. B6 rich foods, so poultry, turkey or chicken, walnuts, and bananas. As you can see, walnuts are a really great addition. I found some maple glazed ones that I was adding to my salads. I actually need to get those again. So freaking delicious. And then vitamin E, you can find that in sunflower and pumpkin seeds. Those are two really great ways. Not to mention that when we talk about prioritizing more healthy fats, that also helps us absorb fat-soluble vitamins like vitamins A, D, E, and K. So once again, all of this kind of plays hand in hand with each other. And then last but not least, minimizing your caffeine and alcohol intake. Now, I mentioned this kind of leading into like your luteal phase and menstrual phase specifically, but what we do know is that alcohol specifically is a known toxin. We know that it can cause inflammation in the human body. And so minimizing that can just help to reduce inflammation when coming off of the pill. And then in terms of kind of minimizing caffeine, you don't need to cut out caffeine. I would more so just say to try to keep it like 200 milligrams or lower. That's typically what I try to strive for and where my body feels best. But like the recommended dietary allowance for caffeine is up to 400 milligrams. So just kind of figuring out like where your body feels good with caffeine. I think my biggest caveat with caffeine is 1, not using it to shut off your appetite or your hunger cues. And 2, not using it as a supplement to get more energy when you actually need more food. Because like I said, having an adequate amount of food means that you're going to have an adequate amount of energy, which means that you're going to have a healthy and functioning cycle. So these are all of the things that I would potentially do if I was planning to come off of birth control, like if I could go back and redo it again. And like I said, this is what I work on with a lot of the clients that are also planning to come off of birth control. And I know that's a lot of information. And that's why I said that if you are someone who's like, Taylor, I'm just trying to figure out the foundationals right now. Honestly, a lot of those things are great foundationals, like increasing and prioritizing protein, including more healthy fats, getting adequate carbohydrates. Those are all things that we can be adding into our diet, whether we're trying to come off of birth control or not. So I think that regardless, focusing on those foundations first and then implementing these things down the line can be super helpful. So yeah, that's kind of like my personal journey with coming off of birth control. And like I said, for me personally, cycle syncing and coming off of birth control has improved so many things for me specifically. I wish that we had more evidence-based data on this because I do think that there is some legitimacy to it. And I do think that women can benefit from understanding and being empowered by their cycle, because even like the cognitive side of things too. Like for me, during my follicular and ovulation phase, I can pump out content like it is nobody's damn business. Like I think I had like 12 videos filmed and ready to go in my drafts last week, but now I'm leaning into my luteal phase. And literally yesterday I was like, I can't come up with a single video concept. Like I have no idea what to write about. I came up with like 6 podcast topics last week. Like it's absolutely crazy, but lean into that. Like as you start to kind of learn where your body functions best throughout the course of your cycle, track that. Like whether you're using Natural Cycles or any other sort of cycle tracking app, like track all of these things to figure out like, when do I feel my best? When should I be prioritizing like big presentations? When should I be filming brand deals? Like that's something that I try to do. I try to film brand deals like during my follicular phase so that I'm on my best line of energy. Or I try to film or back film a lot of content so that when I'm not feeling my best during my luteal and menstrual phase, I don't feel like I have to push out a crap ton of content when I don't necessarily have the brain space for it. So I think the more and more you learn and empower yourself by understanding your body is such a cool thing as a woman, because I think a lot of the times the unfortunate thing is we're kind of just taught to like put band-aids or like not learn and understand our bodies a little bit better. So I hope that this is a great resource for you. And I'm also going to tag a few things in the show notes that I think can be helpful in terms of like learning more about cycle syncing and figuring out if it's something that's beneficial for you. But as always, thank you so much for listening. I love you all. I appreciate this community more than anything. And like I said, as a registered dietitian, in terms of my ethics, I have to continue to say that this, unfortunately, we don't have any evidence-based data to back this up. So this is my personal journey and my personal story. If you choose to implement it and it does or does not work for you, everybody's bodies are different. So, but I wanted to share my personal journey because I do think that it's just a great thing to be talking about our cycle more and to normalize learning and understanding it as females. So once again, I love you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely week. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Simply Balanced. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing a part of your day with me. I hope you find inspiration in our discussion and feel more equipped to embrace the balanced girl aesthetic in your daily life. Remember, balance is a journey, not a destination. It's about finding what works for you in your unique way. As we part ways, I encourage you to reflect on one thing you learned today and how you can incorporate that into your life to create more balance. Don't forget to subscribe to Simply Balanced so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed our time together, consider leaving a review or sharing the podcast with a friend. Your support means the world, and until next time, keep striving for balance, nourish your body and mind, and remember to cherish life's simple pleasures. This is Taylor Grasso signing off. Stay balanced and see you next episode.